Gordon, your book was just published, and at the time, we didn't know who was going to take office this January. Now we have a new strong president coming in after 4 years of incredible vacillation and weakness and humiliation. I guess I don't have to say any more about that. So he's going to be taking office, President Trump, in 2 months. Is your book perhaps even more important than ever because the Trump administration will agree and actually take action?
Yes, there are many things that the Trump administration will do to protect our country. The issue here is that China uses every point of contact to take down our society. So we need our government to lead us in an all-of-society effort to sever those connections. Now, I know that that sounds extreme, but the point is we're now being overwhelmed. And until we can figure this out, we have to cut those links with China so that China can't use them against us. And that means trade, investment, technical cooperation, all of these things that we have gotten used to. Remember, we have had decades of engagement theory. This idea that was promoted and implemented by our foreign policy elites was that if we just worked with the Chinese regime, it would grow strong and it would see it to be in its interest to defend the international system. Well, that sounds nice, but we know that it didn't work out because China is using its newfound strength to try to subjugate everybody around the world. And that clearly is unacceptable, not just to Americans, but to every other country as well.
Agreed. And it seems to me that there's a lot of correlation that we won't go in this direction with the Obama and Biden administration's treatment of Iran, as if taking an enemy and playing nice with it and showing them how nice you will be is actually going to turn someone who has a fundamental disconnect or an opposition to your civilizational outlook is going to just flip them. Oh, America's being so nice to me. Now we'll be nice to America. Let's just be friends. That's just not going to happen, is it?
It didn't happen during the Obama years, and it certainly didn't happen during the Biden years. We got to look at the September 11th, 2023 deal that Biden did with Iran, which unfroze billions of dollars. So what happened? October 7th, Iran assaulted Israel. So the connection there is so clear that whatever the Biden and Obama policies were, they might sound good to the ear, but in practice they were disastrous. And by the way, as part of that 9/11 2023 deal, Biden gave clemency to 5 Iranian operatives. And incredibly, he allowed 3 of them to stay in the United States, even at a time when other Iranian operatives were trying to assassinate former Trump officials. So clearly the Biden administration just got this 100% wrong.
You know, I'm going to interject something I was going to bring up later in the conversation, but it's on a spiritual realm. How important is wisdom, which I bring it up now because I think there's a fundamental lack of wisdom with people who do not have a clear relationship with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the Bible. And so that's one part of this question. And the second part is, how important is prayer in defeating China?
I believe that we have to be a religious nation, a nation of faith, and a moral nation. And we have lost our way in recent years. And the way we can get this back is to remember that we are a nation of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that we have got to go back to our roots because we have lost that morality and that faith.
And we have to be bold about it because timidity doesn't work when it comes to your faith, and especially after this long slide into almost oblivion, where God has just shown us this great mercy in giving us another chance before some kind of judgment, that we have to be bold about it and not buy into this. We have a secular society and America wasn't founded as a Christian nation, all of that baloney. And so prayer, but then the wisdom, we need to be praying for Donald Trump and his entire administration to have the wisdom of the scriptures, of the knowledge of God in order to make these decisions, because the ideas of appeasing evil, like Hitler was once appeased, like Obama began the appeasement with Iran, as Biden seems as if he's a puppet of China and Iran. That is a fundamental lack of wisdom. And so we should be praying for wisdom for our leaders in the next 4 years.
Theoretically, I suppose you can understand evil if you are an atheist, but it doesn't work. I mean, to understand evil, you have to have religion in your soul. You have to have faith, because good versus evil is the struggle that one learns about in the Bible. So going back to your earlier question, yes, we have to pray, we have to be of faith, we have to be moral, because if we do that, then we can have that wisdom that you talk about, and we will be able to defeat evil, because that's what we see. We see it in Iran, and we see it in China's regime, and we see it elsewhere around the world.
That's right. Ronald Reagan, who was a man of faith, brought down the Soviet Union, though it didn't happen until after he was out of office. Is it possible that Donald Trump and this team that he has put together, unlike any presidential administration, I think, in the history of our country, maybe since the founding, could he and his administration bring down the CCP through economic pressures and liberate over 1 billion people?
Yes. And one of the reasons is that China right now is particularly vulnerable. Xi Jinping has turned his back on the idea of making consumption the sustainable basis of China's economy. That leaves him only one option to avoid a grim situation, and that is to export his way out of his problems. That means he's put his fate in our hands. That means he absolutely needs the American market. That American market is the largest in the world. But it's not only Trump's tariffs that could close off the market to Chinese products. It's also by doing that, Trump will give inspiration to others around the world, not only in Europe, but in the global South, as it's called, to do the same thing. We know that many Chinese products are made with forced or slave labor, and we could not allow them into the United States.
That's already law, is it not?
It is the Tariff Act of 1930, prohibits the importation into the U.S. of goods made with forced or slave labor. And it's been implemented and supplemented by the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act of 2021 that creates presumptions of forced labor for products that come from the Uyghur areas, Xinjiang, what China calls Xinjiang. So these are important pieces of legislation which have been enforced only in a very sort of lackadaisical manner. Every once in a while, the Biden administration will impose prohibitions on goods from certain Chinese companies, like they did 3 or 4 days ago. But that's very late in his term. And he has been very, very unenthusiastic about enforcing the Tariff Act of 1930.
Isn't that partially because, Donald J. Trump won, I believe, based on a mandate to turn around the American economy, yes, to end this war, this invasion that's at the South, on our southern border, but also to deconstruct, destroy, and dismantle the deep state. And it seems to me that the deep state is, first and foremost, there is the administrative state, which is really, an overlap there, but the deep state seems to me to have many, many connections deeper into intelligence and to military and to, statecraft and the globalist agenda. And so it seems to me that we are compromised, not only, though, in our administration, but nationwide in Congress, both Republicans and Democrats. I don't know about independents, if there are any, and in our state houses and our governorships across the country. What can you say about that?
Well, China has worked very hard to compromise our officials. They have basically taken over universities, media, Hollywood. And we know that it's been pervasive and comprehensive. Just to give you an example, the first time that China's Ministry of State Security contacted Eric Swalwell was not when he was on the House Intelligence Committee, where obviously he'd be of great benefit for China. It was when he was sitting on the City Council of Dublin City, California. Now, Swalwell could not have been the only person groomed by China. There have to be dozens, if not hundreds, of Swalwells. This is not to say that Swalwell did anything wrong, but it is to show how extensive China's efforts to compromise our officials are, because there have to be hundreds, if not thousands, of Ministry of State Security agents in our country trying to compromise the next Swalwell.
Oh, I would think that it's not just dozens. I would think that there are many, many people, and I think we need to be very wary that there are going to be people in the Republican Party, perhaps even those who call themselves conservatives outwardly, who are bought and paid for. I have looked at the decisions that Biden has made, or whoever makes those decisions, for the last 4 years. And every single time some insane decision or non-decision is made, I've thought, do they have recordings of whatever kind, an agreement being made? Something that could be released to destroy him. And I don't know that that's the case. I do believe that he's actively involved in criminal activities and selling influence, but I don't know what they have. But don't you think that it's pretty easy? We can tell with Project Veritas and James O'Keefe that all you have to do is have a pretty girl go into a bar or restaurant, have a chat with somebody, and they spill the beans, right on camera. So can't we assume that there are a lot of people in all levels of American government that have been compromised and have to do the bidding of China?
Yes, and I'm glad you raised the point about intimidation or blackmail of Biden. You know, people have focused on corruption, all the millions of dollars that have flowed into the Biden family. But I worry, and you know, money always leaves a trail. So we'll be able to find that one way or another at some point. But the thing we may never know has been what you pointed out, which is blackmail. We know, for instance, that Hunter Biden went to China at a time when he was, and by admittedly, in very, he was troubled. And if he has done anything compromising on Chinese soil, the Ministry of State Security will have evidence of it. And they could use that against Biden. And that does explain some otherwise inexplicable decisions and non-decisions that he's arrived at. So I worry about that because that's the type of thing we may never know about, but it can be just as effective. You know, a father will always protect his son. And that's a very powerful human emotion, but it's one that China could very well have been employing against the United States.
All these years. You know, China right now is in a tenuous position. Well, okay, I'm not telling you anything. I don't mean it that way. You know, and you teach that China's in a precarious position because their economy, well, the Trump administration coming in, he's going to play hardball. He's not going to play tiddlywinks. Their demographic problem, their environmental problem, their self-sufficiency with regard to being able to feed themselves. There are so many problems. They're in discontent. These people that that the young people are just, they're calling it lying flat. Like, in other words, correct me if I'm wrong, is this sort of like the idea of there's no way I could ever get ahead. I could never get married, have children, own my own apartment, have a nice business. I can't have that life that I planned for when going to university. So I might as well just watch TV or YouTube videos or something. Is that what lying flat is?
Yeah, that's what lying flat is. It's opting out of Chinese society, and many in the younger age cohorts have done that. They also, there are other a lot of terms for it. One of them is just retiring, and you have a group of you know, young Chinese who have decided that they were going to live in the countryside and live very simple lives. This is sort of like Walden, I suppose, but it's on a mass scale. And it's because, not that they want to find spiritual contentment, because they have no other alternative. So yes, that is throughout throughout society. And, Elizabeth, we're seeing some very strange things. So, for instance, there have been these instances of, every night, 100,000 kids in one central Chinese city bicycle throughout the night to another central Chinese city in order to buy dumplings. And this just is beginnings of a mass movement. It is just people who have just rejected this whole repression and coercion from society. They want to breathe. And so we're seeing very unusual, abnormal social incidents. Also, at the same time, there have been these spate of mass killings in Chinese society. The Chinese don't have access to guns, so they're using cars, for instance, to kill dozens of people at a time. This is just horrific.
They're losing it.
Yes.
They're just losing it. China was all the rage not too many decades ago, where it was going to be China forever. It's going to be all about Asia, the prosperity, the growth of China. See, when they made a few little changes, but the reality is it's crashing because it was all built on sand. It wasn't built on a belief in the liberty and freedom of an individual, of private property and autonomy to make decisions about your body, your family, your faith. It's all, you cannot have freedom without freedom. The things that require freedom, like freedom without freedom, that's all a big, it's just a propaganda show, like a Potemkin village, these big cities that are empty. Potemkin village. So it's sort of like China's crashing. And the reason I was leading up to this is it seems to me that the pressure is on Xi to make decisions that may not bode well for him or for the world or the United States. And I'm wondering if with this, with the advent of a second Trump administration, which is got to be the nightmare of so many leaders in the world and the joy of so many others, that the country's economy is failing, demography, and all of the rest of it. And now Trump is coming in. He's got to do something for his posterity, for his reputation in history, and he's only got a small window. He could either do it now, but he's still going to have Trump coming in madder than heck if he pulls something now and starts a war, or he could start it during the Trump years, which seems crazy, but maybe he will think, this is my calculation, will he think Trump, I mean, we don't even have enough ammunition to go to war right now. Is that correct still? Like this week?
We have shortages of ammunition. We have shortages of missiles.
Right. So maybe he will, in his calculation, he'll say, well, Trump's here. He's definitely going to go to war when I do this, or push that button, and I can push this into war. And at least America is not ready for it because we've had 4 years of Biden. We only had 4 years of Trump, but before that was 8 years of Obama. This may be our last shot and the last shot of his legacy. So what do you think about that?
It's fascinating that throughout this month, China has been uncharacteristically quiet in its peripheral seas and airspace. And well, I can sort of assign maybe some domestic reasons for that, but I think mostly is because they knew that Trump was going to get elected. And after he was, and after it was a resounding victory, I think Xi Jinping doesn't want to take Trump on. And so right now we have this period of calm and quiet, which is very, very welcome. I can't say that it's going to last indefinitely, but you got to remember that the world was turbulent during the Obama years. And then Trump took the oath of office and things went quiet. You know, from 2017 to the time he left office in 2021, the world was peaceful and stable. It was only after Biden took over that things fell apart. And right now, the Chinese, I think, are very, very concerned about Trump, and they don't want to provoke him. So we've been enjoying this period of this just month of quiet in China's areas. So
South
I'm
China
happy about
Sea,
that.
the
And
East China Sea, in all those areas,
yeah,
they're not being belligerent. They're not coming over to Alaska and or flying balloons over the country. So everything's quiet right
yeah,
now.
everything is quiet this
All's
month.
quiet on the
That's
Eastern
not to say
Front.
what's going to happen in December, but this month has been extraordinarily quiet.
Okay,
So we should
well,
enjoy it while we can.
we should, but I know this is not going to happen. But if the Trump team came in and for some reason did not make these wholesale changes in our China policy, national security policies, as they relate all to China, forget everybody else. China will, according to your book, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, they are preparing for war. They have a plan for war. They are going to attempt to destroy the United States of America because America embodies the greatest threat because of what we believe in and the true joy and the beauty of our nation, our civilization. And so they will go to war with us. So if we don't act now, we are condemning ourselves to that war.
Yeah. China's regime believes it is in an existential struggle with the United States, Elizabeth. And it's not because of anything that we say or do, but it's because of who we are. An insecure regime in Beijing is worried about the inspirational impact of America's values and form of governance on the Chinese people. So the Communist Party believes it will never be secure as long as our country exists. And by the way, Donald Trump is extraordinarily popular in China. And it's not because of what he believes or what he has done. You know, a lot of Chinese people don't like what he says and what he does. But the point is, yeah, that too. But the point is that Trump is unscripted. He is fresh. He says what he thinks. And he is a contrast to China's lifeless leaders. The other thing is that people understand that Trump was able to defeat the elites. And it gives, I think, hope to Chinese people that they can defeat their elites, which they hate. So really what we've got right now is the Chinese people just love President Trump.
Well, the people of England, the people of Israel, the people of so many states around this world that either don't have liberty, freedom, and choices, and that they can have their American dream in their country. They love him because he does present hope. And you just put it so beautifully. The defeat of the elites seems so impossible. We have lived under this pall for so many years in America because we had the respite, and then we had what happened in 2020, which we won't go into. But just imagine what, Keir Starmer in Britain. I mean, he's a madman of authoritarian madman. You've got Xi in China, and I'm just picturing Chinese people trying to see Xi doing a dance and really, having that fun and throwing some McDonald's fries in a little box and handing it to people. That's got to be like almost a Twilight Zone experience for Chinese people.
Yes, and the garbage truck.
Yeah.
China's leader, Xi Jinping, would never do that. And his predecessor was even less lifelike. So, it was Hu Jintao. So that's the reason why the Chinese people love it. I mean, he represents something which is very, very different. And you don't see those in leaders around the world. And by the way, you mentioned Karl Starmer, the British Prime Minister. In 4 months, he's lost 43 percentage points of popularity. And now there is a petition signed by 2 million Britons wanting a new election.
I was so depressed when he got elected. I followed that election every minute. He got elected and I thought 5 years, no. And now 2 million people signed that petition. It's crazy. I'm going to hopefully be interviewing Nigel Farage to find out what's next. Now, we have so many different threats. The illegal aliens that have come over the border from China. That is very fascinating and foreboding to us because naturally, if there are people like your dad, come on in, we want you, hug you, go start a business, raise a kid like Gordon, But we know that unlike years ago, they are single military-aged men. And I want to connect this with something else. China has purchased, they own somewhere around, I don't know, is it 320 Chinese nationals, 384,000 minimum acres of American farmland and forests and other large, massive tracts of land. The billionaire that owns Alibaba just bought 28,000, not just, but bought 28,000 acres of beautiful forests. He says he bought it for conservation purposes. So he had to leave China to buy 28,000 acres of American land to be a conservationist. So that clearly I'm not agreeing with that. So this is my little scenario. When China clearly sends some of these people over, and it may be in the hundreds or the thousands, and they're sort of that fifth column in America. Could these large tracts of land that the federal government has no law against selling to foreigners, there's no limit, in other words, and so we have to fix that, I'm thinking you're going to say, but couldn't these end up being training bases and espionage bases where these men are coming over the border, they're heading up to the Adirondacks in New York where Alibaba's guy, and I'm not accusing him, the Alibaba guy, but or to the company, I mean, the land that was purchased out on the West Coast in Oregon or Washington. Is that possible that these could be training camps and bases for espionage because they're hidden? You know, it's just 28,000 acres. How many tunnels and underground bunkers and storage facilities could you have?
Yeah, we know some things which are really disturbing. So, for instance, we focused in on the Chinese companies buying land near military bases, but also there's the illegal marijuana grows, and also in Oklahoma, we have seen some very, very troubling behavior on the part of Chinese owners, that they could be basing human trafficking operations on their land. In Oklahoma, Chinese parties build fences on their land, and everybody builds fences in Oklahoma, but in Oklahoma, Americans build fences to keep people out. The Chinese are patrolling their land with guards with machine guns, and they're building fences to keep people in.
That's a
And so
problem.
we have, yeah, this is these sites, I think we know that criminal activity is going on there, and we should not be permitting that. So there's a whole number of things that are going on. While you referred to the migrants coming in, the single males, military age, traveling without family members, while this is happening, we are seeing an extraordinary uptick in Chinese nationals and other nationals trying to sneak into our military bases. So, for instance, in September, a Chinese national tried twice to get on a U.S. nuclear weapons base in the lower 48 states. So these things are happening, and we don't know exactly what's occurring, but just up to no good. And by the way, that they've got, we discovered that Chinese biological weapons lab in Reedley, California, that alert building inspector where she saw the hose connected to a building that was supposed to be abandoned. Inside, they found the vials for at least 20 pathogens and almost 1,000 mice that had been genetically engineered to spread disease. One of those pathogens was for Ebola. Now, we know that at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, those friends who gave us COVID-19, they are now studying Ebola, which means they are trying to weaponize it. Ebola in nature has a fatality rate of 50%. So if they can increase the lethality of it, or if they can make it more transmissible, they will have a disease that could kill Americans by not only the thousands, but maybe the hundreds of thousands.
And they can also probably bioengineer it so that it attacks certain genetic groups more lethally, if that's a
Yes,
word,
well,
than others. Like, in other words, Chinese DNA is probably different than Irish.
yes. Well, what they call those are specific ethnic genetic attacks. And Chinese technicians actually write about this in their publications. And the science of DNA has progressed so far that it's actually possible to design a disease that will kill only one person. So they are probably almost certainly designing diseases to kill non-Chinese, diseases that will leave Chinese people immune. So that's what we've got, the world that we're in. Now, China is a party to the Biological Weapons Convention, as are we. It prohibits this type of holding these types of weapons, but there's no enforcement mechanisms, Elizabeth. So we have a one-way treaty with China, which we know that they're violating.
Well, they're weaponizing also uh, when they're launching missiles, and these missiles are supposed to be carrying, but not at this time, nuclear warheads. They're essentially practicing for some kind of warfare that is absolutely against the treaty that we have signed on to and China signed on to with regard to weaponizing space, correct?
Yes, they have, for instance, they launched a missile a couple of years ago that uh, clearly was um, this was a missile that they had circled the Earth. It was sort of like what the Soviets had designed during the Cold War, FOBS, fractional orbital bombardment system, which is a violation of the space treaty. Now, China didn't have a nuclear warhead on their missile, but the type of missile that they were designing and testing, one that went around the world, was one that makes sense only if you put a nuke in the top of it. And so clearly they have made it very clear that they are practicing to violate, they're creating weapons that will violate the space treaty.
I want to stress that there are things that we have to decide if we're going to treat them with aggressiveness and without apology in our domestic as well as our foreign, I mean, the domestic realm where China is arriving here. For instance, those lands that they're buying. I'll do a quick round. Do you think that we should pass legislation, maybe begin with executive order prohibiting any further sales to either certain or all foreign nations or foreign nationals until legislation is passed that will maybe be more refined?
Yeah, I think we should prohibit the Chinese nationals from owning any farm or ranch land or forest areas. Remember, no American can buy a square inch of China. So why are we allowing them to do that here? So we should prohibit all of those. It's just an issue of reciprocity. And if Chinese nationals are committing crimes on their property, we should apply our forfeiture statutes to seize that property. So I believe that we need to get the Chinese nationals off of our farm, ranch land, and forests.
I think that we should pass, or there should be an executive order. I don't know, there's certain limits on executive orders, of course, but that any foreign land can be um, uh, investigated in terms of its actual use. And you could even designate it when it comes to certain countries. And then we could determine whether or not these large tracts of land are being used for the nefarious purposes that you and I both suspect. Now, also, there are universities, of course, that have these Confucius centers, which really it should be Mao centers. And they are teaching communism, socialism, which to me is one of the greatest threats. Yes, nukes. Yes, the South China Sea and Taiwan and all that. However, our children's minds are being utterly corrupted because our universities have been socialist for years. And we're allowing communist China, and I would also say Islamist nations, but that's another topic, to fund these programs, which are a staging. This is just a place to further go into, to bring in the minds of American young people into this socialist dogma, settler colonialism, post-colonialism, all of the offshoots of communist socialist ideology. And it's the long term. This is like a cancer that's only going to become visible, which it actually already did after October 7th, truly visible in the future as these children come out into the work world and vote and all the rest. So what do we do with universities? Just shut all foreign contributions to universities who accept even $1 of federal funds?
Yeah, what I think we should do is we should prohibit all Confucius institutes and our colleges and universities, because we can't have a Reagan Institute in China. So why do we allow them to have, a Mao Institute in the United States? But even more important, we need to get their Confucius classrooms out of our secondary schools. We need to have this reciprocity. And we have, the President of the United States has the authority to do it. But this should be legislation as well. And, as for foreign contributions from China, yeah, I don't think we should permit those. We don't want them buying our universities.
Do you think that we should be shutting down all consulates other than the embassy right in Washington, D.C.?
Yes, we should close China's 4 consulates. They've been engaged in activities which violate our